Hear me out. Can we please make this whole magic thing more unique? The reason I'm saying this is because I was running a campaign last year with 3 spellcasters, a wizard, a sorcerer, and a cleric. They're all different classes with different spell lists and different flavor text in the player's handbook. But after about 6 sessions, I realized something that made me want to throw my DM screen across the room. Guess what? Well, you might already know this if it's happened to you, but they all felt exactly the same. Same combat pattern, every fight. Fireball when grouped, counterspell on rotation, healing word as a bonus action. It didn't matter what the character sheet said, and it didn't matter that one was supposed to be a scholarly researcher and another was channeling divine wrath. In practice, when we actually sat down to play, they were just 3 different coloured buttons pressing the same efficient spells in the same efficient order. And I get it, I'm not blaming the players, they're doing what works. Magic in D&D is vast and overwhelming, so you find your reliable tools and stick with them, but man, it makes the game feel smaller than it should. Magic is supposed to be endless, it's supposed to be weird and personal and dangerous. Instead it becomes a loop. A very effective loop, but it's still a loop. For a while I thought the answer was homebrewing new spells or adding mechanics, like, I don't know, maybe spell corruption tables or wild magic for everyone. And some of that stuff works if you want it, but it's also a ton of work and it doesn't actually solve the problem I'm describing, because the problem isn't the spells. Oh, surprise. But I'm serious, it's not that. The problem is, we're not treating magic like it belongs to people, we're treating it like a toolbox that anyone can grab from. So I first realized that magic feels different when who's casting it matters more than what they're casting. That's pretty much it. I'm not going to sell you a supplement or a new rule set. I want to talk to you about how you make casters feel distinct and memorable using nothing but identity, behaviour, and letting the world react to them differently. No new mechanics required, which is absolutely fantastic. The first thing, use style. Okay, let's say 2 casters walk into a dungeon, both have fireball prepared, both have the same spell save DC, so on paper, they're identical. But one of them sees fireball as a tool of last resort. It's messy and loud and dangerous to bystanders. They'll use it if they have to, but they don't like it. The other caster, oh, fireball is the answer, just because they like watching things burn, or because they want everyone in the room to know exactly who just ended the fight. I bet you had one of these people at least once in your game. But can you see the difference? It's the same spell, but completely different casters. That difference is the use style. And it's the fastest way to make a caster feel like a real person instead of a spell list with legs. Use style is about intention and habit. It's the pattern of choices that make a caster recognizable even when you're not looking at their character sheet. Most samey characters aren't underpowered, they're just undefined. They haven't figured out their casting fingerprint yet. And once you do that, once you nail down even a few simple details, everything else starts falling into place. Forget about new spells. Figure out how this specific person relates to the magic they already have. So the framework, / what to do, I call it the casting fingerprint, and it's 3 things. 1, it's a signature spell, the one people associate them with. Not necessarily the strongest spell, but the one they reach for when they need to feel like themselves. 2, favorite trick, a repeatable, clever use of a common spell that they've made their own. Like using mold earth to collapse terrain under enemies instead of damaging them directly. And that's where their personality is. 3, forbidden spell, a line they will not cross, until they do, of course. This is the spell that represents a moral boundary or personal trauma, or a promise maybe. You know, promises they made to someone they loved. Aww. So when they finally cast it, it means something. Let's see all of this through an example. This is the pacifist. He has spent the entire campaign using sleep and charm and sanctuary to avoid killing people. They've taken hits for it, made fights harder than they needed to be, but they've held the line. And then one day someone crosses them in a way they can't ignore, and they cast Disintegrate, and the whole party's jaws are going to hit the table, because they just broke their one rule, and everyone knows it cost them something. Do you see what I mean? So I also figured out that, if you're a player and you want to figure this out for your own caster, you can ask yourself these questions. What spell do you cast when you're scared? What spell do you cast when you're angry? What spell do you cast to be liked? And what spell do you refuse to cast, and why? Answer those, and you've got a fingerprint, you've got a person. But we're not done, let's talk about the next part of this video, knowledge. Alright, so use style makes a caster feel distinct, but if you really want magic to feel unique, you want to mess with what people know. The thing is, knowledge creates hierarchy, and honestly, this applies in real life and at the table. It creates mentorship and envy and cults and rivalries. It makes magic feel like something you can discover, instead of something you just pick from a list when you level up. That being said, I think there are 3 archetypes that change how magic feels depending on what the caster knows. One of them is the technician. He treats magic like engineering, repeatable, logical, testable, precise. They know the theory behind every spell. They can modify effects on the fly because they understand the principles. That doesn't make them more powerful, right? But they're more versatile because they've studied the why behind the what. And just like in real life, that knowledge makes them dangerous. The intuitive is the opposite. They don't understand magic, they feel it. They're powerful, yes, but it's messy and emotional, and sometimes things go wrong in ways they can't predict. They cast from instinct, and that makes them unpredictable. An intuitive caster might throw a fireball that burns hotter than it should because they were angry, or colder because they hesitated. The magic reflects them, and they can't always control that. And the third archetype is the borrower. It has power, but it's not really theirs. It comes from a patron, a god, a pact, a relic, anyway, something external. And that source has opinions, it has limits, it has prices. The borrower might be incredibly strong, but their powers come with strings attached. And those strings make for great drama. And just to be clear, these aren't classes, they're ways of approaching magic, and they apply to player characters, NPCs, and especially villains. And while boring power might sound like a warlock thing, it doesn't have to be. It could just as easily be a wizard with a sentient staff, or a relic that decides when it wants to cooperate. Now, if you're a DM, and man, this is something I wish I'd figured out earlier, your scary villains don't need to do more damage. They need one extra thing that players don't know yet. But it doesn't have to be some massive homebrew, just has to be discoverable. Clues in their spellbook, patterns in their behavior, witnesses who survived and can describe what they saw. Let your players figure out what the villain knows, and make it into a mystery worth solving. Okay, last piece. If you want magic to feel real, and I mean really embedded in the world, not just floating above like a game mechanic, you have to show how the world has adapted to it. My motto is that magic doesn't exist in a vacuum, and I always try to pay attention to that. If people can teleport, it makes sense that society builds around that. If people can raise the dead, religion changes, obviously. The world reacts to magic, and those reactions shape how casters behave, way more than their spell lists do. So decide where magic sits in your world. And no, I'm not saying you have to overhaul your world, like everything is magic and blah blah blah. Just add a few details that show magic has consequences, like casting laws posted like ordinances, because you know, that would be normal under a magic world where magic is just normal. Or funny details like an inn with a sign saying, no summoning in rooms, 10 gold fine. Little touches, they add up. Alright, if you've made it this far, you might be asking how to actually use all of this. I'm giving you a checklist to follow so you can make any caster memorable in just 1 minute. Well, maybe 3, but you get the idea. Let's focus on only 5 things. Works for villains, allies, rivals, throwaway NPCs, doesn't matter. First, sensory hook. The first thing players notice. Play with smell, or sound, or how they look when they concentrate. Think about the feeling. Second, obsession. But what do they want? Not their goal, their obsession. The thing they'll sacrifice for. Third is boundary. What won't they do? Where's the line? Fourth, signature move. The spell or tactic they default to, the thing players will recognize in a snap. And fifth, complication. The cost, the side effect, or the consequence. Fill in those 5 and that's it. That's a memorable caster. Give it a go. And no need to thank me for saving your table from the loop. Just kidding. If it actually works for you too, just tell me. How do you deal with this problem at your table? Let me know in the comments. Share your knowledge and experience with others so we can all learn together. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay spicy, adventurers.